Welcome back to another 1v1 here on the SDH Network. I'm Jason Longshore. We're catching up on the season for the Stormy Petrels of Oglethorpe University with head coach John Akin. How's it going, John, after the long road trip out west?
Yeah, still recovering from that 10-hour bus ride, but happily coming back with a trophy.
Yes, fifth straight year that Oglethorpe has guaranteed the top of the SAA, at least a share. It's not completely locked up solo just yet. One more match this weekend in league play. Barry come into town to face Oglethorpe in Brookhaven on Saturday night. For the men, it's a 7 o'clock kick. For the women, it's 4:30. It's senior night. Oglethorpe-Barry has been a really nice rivalry over the years, huh?
It has been. We despite some box scores and us heavily outshooting them, they've been overtime games the last two times we've played. You know, they keep, they're well coached and organized, and it's an in-state rivalry, both in recruiting and, long history of playing each other. So it's always a battle, but we hope to keep our thumbs on them and win another one.
And that would put Oglethorpe to 7-0 in the conference this season and take it all the way back to, mid-season 2015 for the last loss in conference play?
Correct.
How difficult is it at this point when everybody knows what the streak number is, everybody knows the consecutive conference title streak? How difficult is it to play with that bullseye on your back?
I think we try to remove that obstacle just by focusing on ourselves and playing to our standard. It's hard, we're getting everybody's best game. That's basically for the teams that, most likely won't make it to a conference championship. When they play us, that's their conference championship. So, for an example, Rhodes, played 5, almost 6 in the back to keep things tight, and they scrapped and fought for everything, even though we dominated, all facets of the game. But they just couldn't keep that up for, 2 halves. So we just basically, with ball circulation, wore them down, and then eventually, scored, a few goals in the second half. But, everybody's up for it. So that's probably, been the biggest challenge is facing those kind of final mentalities, even against, some inferior opponents, and still being sharp. So
it's tough to go back and forth, and the conference schedule started out with the teams that are in second and third right now going into the final weekend of SAA play, Center and Suwannee. Both difficult games, both tight games, both wins for Oglethorpe. And when Birmingham Southern came to town, we had a conversation before kickoff and looking for a little bit different way for Oglethorpe to play and play a little more direct at times and use some of the new freshmen who give you a different look. How was it this weekend flipping into that game at Rhodes on Friday where, 5-4-1 is how they started, and it got deeper and deeper to where the direct play, that ball over the top that's been so successful in the wins over Birmingham Southern and Millsaps, it wasn't really on, and you had to go back to the ball circulation and that style of play.
Yeah, we basically, teams are going to set up differently based on the characteristics of their team and whatever their staff feels is the best way for them to compete against us. So the great thing that I think has come out of the way, we've gone about our business is people have sat in, people have played us straight up, people have done some things in between, and we've significantly beaten them different ways. So, what I preach to our kids is, you have to do what the game calls for. They're going to sit in. We have to be patient and wait for their moment to, lapse in concentration, quality of delivery and timing of runs on our end. If they want to run with us, we can try to go, direct if they're going to try to leave it up to offsides or referees or, reducing the space that we have to play in. So, that's been the really rewarding thing for me to see from this group is, the problem solving. which is what we ask them to do academically at a great school like Oglethorpe, and now they're doing the same thing on the field, which it's fun to see because that's a challenge to do collectively, especially when you're so committed to our style of play, recognizing those moments when you got to mix it up.
Yeah, it's such an underrated part of building a team and building an individual player is that problem-solving component. What are some of the things you do in training to amplify that and prepare your team to make those decisions in matches quickly?
We do a lot of two-touch, one-touch activities, requiring them to prepare their thought before they execute the technique. We vary things. I mean, these are all players that need to continue to develop themselves, technically and sharpen things up. So it's a lot of basics, actually, and we just hammer it home and try to, show some new ways to think about some, different skills that you have to have as a player. But we try to do that. We try to, create some problem solving activities, a 2-and-1 touch. Playing the ball forward immediately after, winning possession, not allowing them to play backwards to encourage a little more direct play sometimes. And then we basically set up different phases of play where, for 15 minutes at a time, we'll have a team sitting in 15 minutes at a time, directly afterwards, we'll have a team, engaging maybe the top of the circle and then not dropping too deep. And then, at the end of that phase, we'll say, hey, a team's going to try to press you. How do you play through 11 players when they're holding the midfield line and we're taking goal kicks? So we try to create all those scenarios where they're not surprised on game day. And it takes time, too. There have been so many different injuries and long stretches when some key players have been out. So, putting those phases into play with different faces is the real challenge. But it's worked out.
Yeah, it's been impressive to see. You look at the defense especially, and you rarely want to make a lot of changes on the back line. And coming into the year, it looked like a very veteran-laden group that had played together quite a bit. And injuries have completely changed that, along with players jumping up and grabbing spots and not letting go of them. How has the defense come together in these last 4 where they've only conceded once?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Both teams, in the last, of the last 4, the most recent games, both teams sat in extremely deep. So we were getting the ball off the back line, or we were getting the ball off Yuli, our goalkeeper, off goal kicks or rolling the ball out when teams drop off, and our guys were marching the ball to midfield and they have to problem solve. The Birmingham Southern game and the Millsaps game, they said, hey, we're gonna go right at Oglethorpe and try to press them, and then our back line had to deal with things differently of a little bit of pressure, maybe some heavy pressure, and playing through those moments. And then them going forward right away. So it was a lot of transitional moments, which they lived up to, quite well. So, with a sophomore, Steven being a sophomore, you've got, the veteran Sebastian Carlson, then you got another freshman, Josh Labus from North Cobb High School. And then you got another veteran, Wageland. It's been a unique balance, in that way, which I've been pleased with. I mean, we're a pretty strong athletic back line, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah, it's really come together well, and you've got some other options off the bench to change up the personality of that group as well. The attack has really come alive over these last 4 as well, especially in the last 2 at home. Birmingham Southern came in with a great record coming into the match, and it was maybe the most impressive performance I've seen over the last 2 years in the 9-0 win. Just consistent ruthlessness in the attack, and it was quality goals from about 3-4 different players.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the scary statistic, from the program standpoint, is I think we have 4 guys pushing close to 10 goals. Mm-hmm. If you look conversely, our opponent this weekend, Jake Williamson, has 15 of their team's 33 goals. And I think you're alluding to what you saw, in the Birmingham Southern and Millsaps game. I mean, we had a few guys with multiple goal games, but I mean, it's coming from a lot of different places. And you know, another crazy stat is, I mean, right, Ryan Marcano has 8 goals on 24 shots. Jake Williamson has like 75 shots and 15 goals. So, you know, our goal to shot ratio is really impressive with the guys that are kind of banging in goals. You know, Gabe Alvarez, James Williams, Abraham, Ryan Marcano. So it's been I mean, and that's what I think most coaches should strive for, is that balanced attack where, you know, it can come from anywhere, so it's hard to be prepared for those moments.
Yeah, it's not a lot of wasted opportunities, not a lot of wasted shots. I mean, even the shots on goal versus the total shots percentage for your top guys is really impressive. I mean, people make the most of their opportunities. And it's also a team that, if the game calls for patience in the final third, you have the group that can put their foot on the ball and pick out the right pass, especially with a guy like Josh Bronsdorf.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Josh is a special player for sure. You know, the way he can, you know, pull strings, dropping a little bit deeper and pinging it, or playing right underneath the strikers and pulling the trigger himself. You know, he's a great tempo guy. And he's done well. He's one that, you know, that's why we play him as the 10. He can read those situations and kind of play to other players' strengths. And he has a range of passing to do that on multiple levels.
So when you look around at the NCAA picture and the national rankings, it feels like this is a very important conference tournament where there might not be an at-large bid from the SAA this season. Does that add a little extra pressure as you prepare for senior day and then look ahead to the tournament?
I think so. I think our guys know that we really missed some opportunities. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I think Washington Lee is like 3rd in the country. I think Roanoke was 15th, and we played both teams off the park. We were average against Lynchburg and just had a couple bad moments, and still, you know, we missed a penalty and, you know, could have gone our way. So, you know, I feel we're a top. I think we're a top 2 or 3 team in the country. But at the same time, you know, Division III is so ruthless with how limited the spots are relative to how many teams are out there in the country, that there's a pretty good chance that if we don't run the table in this conference tournament, we might not get an opportunity to prove that on the national level.
And preparing for, if things go the way that you expect them to, according to seeding, probably going to be Center or Sewanee in the final. And both games were very tight. One with Sewanee up there was a narrow win. One with Center at home. It was a red card on their goalkeeper late in the first half, and then Stormy Petrels took advantage in the second. But both games played very well, but those are 2 difficult tests.
Yeah, I think so. I think Center's a significantly stronger team than Sewanee. Just overall, I think Sewanee's sitting in a good situation, you know, based on their field. But, you know, our field's not big either. So I think some of their tactics are going to be relatively effective on our field as well, you know, with their long throw, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, and Center's always a war. I mean, I'd like to think we're a much better soccer team, but, you know, Alexander Garuba is a really dangerous player, and Center's very committed and disciplined in defending, which, you know, makes every game difficult. So, you know, if things go to plan and it's one of those 2 teams, yeah, it'll be a good final for sure.
So looking ahead schedule-wise, it's this Saturday, Barry come into town, women at 4:30, men at 7. It's senior night. Should be a pretty intense game, I think, on both fronts. I think the women's match will be intense as well. Then the following weekend on Saturday, the men will host the quarterfinals of the tournament, and the top 4 seeds each host quarterfinals. And then the following weekend is the conference Final Four, and that will be in Brookhaven.
Yes, it will, provided we take care of business in our quarterfinal match.
Right.
The semifinals and finals, Friday the 8th. I want to say it's a 4:30 and 7 kickoff around that time, and then the Sunday the finals will be, you know, at Oglethorpe, regardless if we're in it or not, at 12, 1, or 2 on Sunday the 10th.
Excellent. We will be there. Jessica Jarman and I will be on the call for GoPetrels.com. You can watch, but more importantly, if you're looking for a match on Saturday night locally to get to, first to see the way Oglethorpe plays, we've talked about that all season, but also just a celebration of two of the strongest programs and two of the longest running programs in the Southeast and in the state of Georgia. Oglethorpe Berry, I remember last year the conference semifinal, which was one of the most intense matches that I've ever called. Berry's going to come in with everything loaded, trying to make sure they get that number 4 seed. This final weekend, we talked about it before we started. Teams are playing for seeding, so Berry does have a good bit to play for here.
Yeah, and they're a good team. I mean, they're a good team. They have a really dangerous striker. It's a huge rivalry, and because of that in-state and the overlap in recruiting and the historical values and things like that. So it's always a tight game. I hope it isn't in our favor, but it always seems to be.
It always goes that way. It'll be a good test getting ready for the conference tournament. John, thanks as always, and we'll see you this weekend.
All right, absolutely. Look forward to seeing you, Jason. Thanks so much.